At 9:45 and 31 seconds in the morning of January 26, 2020, the flight recorder aboard Kobe Bryant's helicopter logged its final data point. It recorded a descent rate of 4,300 feet per minute, straight into terrain. Investigators later confirmed there was no mechanical failure and no engine malfunction. But what the black box revealed instead was far harder to accept. It began 10 minutes earlier at the moment the helicopter lifted off. At 9:07 a.m. Pacific Time, the Sikorsky S-76B lifted off from John Wayne Airport, its engines already stabilized, and the final pre-flight checklist complete. The aircraft cleared the ground with a climb rate of 1,500 feet per minute, accelerating rapidly along an initial heading of 090 degrees. Within 15 seconds, the helicopter reached 450 feet above ground level, transitioning into a low-altitude corridor that paralleled the 101 freeway. The pilot kept the helicopter below 800 feet above ground level, in accordance with the visual flight rules clearance granted by air traffic control. Ground speed increased from 115 to 135 knots as the aircraft continued westbound, hugging the corridor's narrow vertical limits. At 9:07:44 a.m., Island Express Dispatch logged the Special Visual Flight Rules clearance, a designation that allowed the flight to proceed despite the low cloud base and reduced visibility. Air traffic control instructed the pilot to remain below 1,500 feet, a restriction designed to keep the helicopter clear of the overcast layer that pressed down over the Los Angeles basin. The aircraft's altitude, as recorded by ADSB data, hovered just below the cloud ceiling, with speed holding steady in the 130-knot range. By 9:08:10 a.m., the pilot requested a climb to 4,000 feet in an effort to clear the cloud base. Air traffic control acknowledged the request, but the helicopter remained confined to the narrow corridor, still operating under visual flight rules. The flight's early trajectory was defined by precise adherence to altitude and speed limits, yet the margin for error was shrinking as the weather continued to close in. The climb placed the helicopter directly beneath the cloud layer, with visibility already showing signs of further deterioration. At 9:44 and 50 seconds a.m., the Sikorsky S-76B crossed into the cloud base over Calabasas. The flight data recorder captured the moment the helicopter left the last sliver of visual reference behind. Airspeed held steady at 141 knots. Altitude was 1,620 feet. The vertical speed indicator still pointed upward. But as the aircraft slipped into instrument meteorological conditions, the outside world disappeared in a dense gray shroud. Inside the cockpit, the pilot's workload spiked. The S-76's primary flight display offered only partial attitude information, and the standby indicator became the pilot's sole lifeline. At 9:45 and 7 seconds a.m., the helicopter began a left turn, climbing past 1,850 feet. The rate of turn increased, but there was no visible horizon to anchor the maneuver. In these conditions, even experienced pilots can lose track of which way is UP. The flight data shows the collective lever still raised and the cyclic pulled back, as if reaching for a sky that was no longer there. A veteran S-76 instructor reviewing the flight data recorder traces explained that when visual cues vanish, the vestibular system takes over. It is easy to feel like you are flying level when you are actually banking and pitching down. At these airspeeds, a small control input can become a steep spiral in seconds. By 9:45 and 23 seconds a.m., the vertical speed reversed violently. The helicopter was now descending at over 4,300 feet per minute. The nose pitched down, and left bank was increasing. The instruments told the truth, but the world outside offered nothing but white. The pilot's last inputs reflected a desperate attempt to recover, but the margin for error was already gone. The black box recorded every second, a silent witness to the loss of control that followed the loss of sight. A few hundred yards from the hillside, A local resident stood outside, drawn by the low thrum of rotors echoing through the morning fog. He later told investigators, "I heard the helicopter, but I couldn't see it. The sound got louder, then faded, then there was silence." His statement was one of several collected by the NTSB, each one describing a helicopter lost in the clouds, unseen but unmistakably close. At 9:45 and 15 seconds in the morning, the pilot's voice came through the radio, "Climbing to 4,000. That transmission would be the last. Just seconds later, radar contact vanished from the Southern California approach controller's screen. The controller called N72EX SoCal, but received no answer. The official transcript records the moment, 9:45 and 28 seconds, radar contact lost. Other witnesses in the Calabasas neighborhood described hearing a rapid increase in engine noise, followed by a sudden silence, and in some accounts, a muffled thud. One recalled, "The helicopter sounded like it was right above the house, but we couldn't see anything. Then it stopped." The final position, confirmed by radar and ADSB data, matched the coordinates later marked by first responders. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders cut off at the same instant the radar trace disappeared. No further transmissions were received. These external accounts, eyewitness statements, air traffic control exchanges, and the precise loss of radar corroborated what the black box had already recorded. The last fragments of communication and observation completed the factual mosaic, fixing the timeline of the tragedy to the second. No interpretation, no speculation, just the raw, final evidence of a flight that slipped from sight and from the world. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrived at the Calabasas hillside within hours of the crash, tasked with piecing together the final moments of the Sikorsky S-76B. The wreckage field stretched across a steep slope marked by scorched earth and shattered airframe components. Every major section of the helicopter, fuselage, rotor system, tail boom was accounted for and documented. The engines were recovered and subjected to a detailed teardown. Both turbines showed signatures consistent with power at the moment of impact, rotational scoring, hot section deformation, and no evidence of pre-impact failure. Engine parameters recorded by the flight data system, exhaust gas temperature, N1 speed, and fuel flow remained within normal limits up to the final second. The transmission and main rotor assembly, often the focus of early speculation, displayed only damage caused by the crash itself. Blades remained attached to the hub, and the gearboxes showed no sign of catastrophic failure. Flight control linkages were traced from cockpit to rotor, confirming continuity. The collective and cyclic positions at impact matched the pilot's last recorded control inputs, evidence of a commanded, not uncommanded, maneuver. Maintenance records for N72EX were reviewed line by line. The helicopter had passed its most recent inspection without discrepancy. No outstanding airworthiness directives, no deferred maintenance, and no reported anomalies in the days before the flight. The airframe's total hours, component cycles, and service history aligned with Sikorsky's safety standards. The NTSB's official statement in the factual report was unequivocal. No evidence of pre-impact power plant or transmission failure was found. This finding eliminated mechanical malfunction as a cause and directed attention to the human and environmental factors that shaped the tragedy. The National Transportation Safety Board's official verdict was blunt. The pilot's decision to continue flight under visual flight rules into instrument meteorological conditions resulted in spatial disorientation and loss of control of the helicopter. The report identified two contributing factors: the pilot's self-imposed pressure to complete the flight, planned continuation bias, and Island Express's inadequate safety management oversight. Spatial disorientation remains one of aviation's most persistent hazards. Deprived of a visible horizon, a pilot's senses can betray them. In this case, the somatogravic illusion took hold inside the clouds. The brain signaled a nose-up climb, while the helicopter actually pitched down and rolled left. Flight data showed the aircraft climbing at over 140 knots, well above recommended speeds for instrument conditions, compounding the illusion of level flight. A human factors expert put it plainly: at high speed, entering cloud can make a pilot feel the aircraft is climbing or turning normally, even as it starts to descend rapidly. The vestibular system overrides what the instruments say. The S-76's primary display lacked a full authoritative attitude reference, forcing reliance on a standby indicator. The black box captured the pilot's last futile attempts to recover. The NTSB findings dismissed lingering myths. There was no mechanical failure. Engines, transmission, and rotors worked until impact. Weather was not clear. The conditions met the definition of instrument meteorological conditions. Air traffic control gave accurate updates and clearances. The tragedy was a chain of human factors, not a single mistake. Every flight leaves a trace, a record of data, decisions, and irreversible consequence. Today, the findings of the NTSB drive new safety reforms, but risk never vanishes. For families and for aviation, the cost remains real. The lessons from this sky are written in permanent record and in the lives forever altered below.